So to make this cute cat, we need basically only spheres, curves. We need the curves for the whiskers. But we start by adding a sphere and we need to scale it on the x-axis. It's not a particular shape. It's not actually a shape you would think you would give a cat, but it's more like a blob. You just need to go and sculpt it, get a shape good enough to have space, to have room to add eyes, and to be a bit proportionate, not flat from the sides, because there are some characters that look very cute in from the front, but once you go on the side view, they're a bit deformed. And we are trying to avoid that. We are trying to keep in mind that we'll have the ears on top, and we need the two eyes, we need the tiny nose, the mouth basically, and the bottom doesn't really matter that much because it will be covered by the mug, which I will show you how to make it in part 2 if you need to. If not, well, you do your own mug. But yeah, so keep on smoothing. A trick that I do often in Blender when it comes to sculpting, it's a trick that actually kills your computer, but you can fix it at the end. So basically, when you see people sculpting and whatever lines they're drawing, the lines are super defined. Well, that happens with the remesh. This is for beginners, what I'm saying, obviously, because people normally use it. I tended to overuse it in the beginning, ending up with like a character with like 3 million faces. And a quick fix for that, in case you really want to use that character, for example, for a game, obviously you wouldn't be able to use that character with 3 million faces, but a quick fix to that is to go to the modifiers and you apply the decimate modifier, which what that does, it reduces the number of faces and you can get a pretty decent number. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that the lower you go with it, the more it affects the actual shape of your character. So anyhow, going back to this, what I do, you see in the process, I'm using remesh quite a lot. I didn't end up with a high amount of faces. Either way, which thing that I didn't show you in the video is that I do end up using this method by the end of it. So you use it, you remesh, and you should you go close, so you don't go, for example, from 0.7 to 0.3 because that's just a huge leap and you might not actually need it. So here you go on and define the eyes, you smooth it. That's the basics in sculpting. You just have to dig, shape, smooth, perhaps remesh a tiny bit, then go over again and redo it until you get the final shape you're happy with. So go on with that until you're happy with what you're getting, or it looks at least similar a tiny bit with what I have on the screen. So here we need to add the nose. And with the nose, that's the thing. I had a sketch. I'll make a short, or I'll post on Instagram my process on how I got to make this cat. But basically I had the sketch, so I didn't know exactly how I will proceed into making. I mean, I didn't think anything through. I just made a sketch and I was like, this must be a very adorable 3D if I am to make it. So I just started and recorded, which was a bit heavy for my computer. So you see that like with the nose I had to do some cuts because there are other techniques you can use to create a nose, obviously. But I just prefer sculpting. I just enjoy this feeling of molding everything, and it's like a very organic process. At least I'm trying to make myself believe so. But the nose, the best thing to do in my personal opinion is to sculpt it, and the coloring is good if you use like a main color, but you can easily just unwrap it and manually paint it, which is very easy, quite easy compared to what you might think. And the tricky part for me was the mount, because I don't know if you know, but I am myself a beginner. And with the mount, I had like 3 attempts, because I tried the basic one where you just get like some spheres and then you just unite them, you join them, and then you try to just mold them a bit together. But in the end, I ended up with this technique, which I think it's like easier for beginners, and also it helps you understand better the tools you have for sculpting in Blender, and how annoying sometimes you can be, but how much pleasure you get at the end when you have an amazing result. So this is also remeshing, and you might say that's crazy, but it is not crazy, because you do not actually have enough faces to work on, right? So that's why when, for example, you put a sphere and you start dragging it, you see it has those like sharp edges and points. So basically you fix that by remeshing it. Remeshing, what it does, it adds more faces, right? And it helps you manage it. So you just pull and drag, and you just think of it as the mouth of the cat, like, they're like fluffy, and this is the base for our whiskers as well. So you see, I'm digging around the nose. I want it to fit as natural as possible, the mouth with the nose itself. You get back into smoothing to fix it. I made once a character, and I created this amazing face. And then once I really needed like badly to use the smooth tool, and that literally destroyed everything. But those are like mistakes of a beginner. You think that once you start doing something, that's it. It's very easy. It's very fast. It can be, but it depends on the type of character you're making. Obviously, if you want a lot of details, you need to invest more time. Compared to as if you just create, as I was doing too, like, basic characters like a sphere, you put like a cylinder, and you don't really sculpt it, you just place them there, you just like tab in object mode and edit mode, and that's it. Anyway, so here we finish our mount. Basically, this is the last part that requires a lot of attention, like detail, especially because I wasn't sure how to approach the situation, as I told you, and also because I was fixated to kind of follow my random sketch, which I will put on the screen here so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. It ended up, the 3D obviously ended up looking way better than the sketch, I have to admit, and but still, I had this fixation to literally imitate the shapes that I was doodling a couple of days ago at 2 a.m., I believe. So yeah. So another thing with sculpting, which I didn't mention, but what you have to do is what I'm doing here, basically going like front, rear view, like press 7 on the keyboard, look from above, and so on. So you know exactly how you'll look from different angles, right? You don't want to you don't want to have, like, sometimes you can have an amazing thing like when you look from the front, but then you go on the sides and it's a monstrosity. Basically, this is happening here in my case. But also this tool, the inflate tool, is quite handy when it comes to lips in general. This is not actually a pair of lips, but it does the job. So I see that a lot of people neglect, because I watched a lot of tutorials and I still do, and a lot of people neglect to talk about the inflating tool. I think it's quite handy, and I think it can fix, like, for example, when you do lips and you use the crease right straight in the face to start to give it the shape. And if you kind of suck at drawing, as I do, the inflate tool will help you. It will come quite easy, and it's not destroying as much as like you don't always need to actually use the smoothing tool, you know. So I think it's something that you should keep in mind, and I think people should do it like more justice. So just like here is about shaping, and making sure it's like uniform. As I said, this is important, right? The mouth, because this will pop out from the fur. We will cover this kitten in fur. So the body, the base, let's call the body the base of the project, of the character. The base isn't that important in this case because it will be completely covered in layers of fur. And what you need is to have the things that pop out that are visible. You need them to be correct, and proportionate. So we fix it here with the crease tool to define it a bit more, because this will be basically the center of the image. So we don't want to mess that up, because obviously the eyes of the cat will be let's call it the object that will get your attention instantly. Another thing is that the mouth in situations like in characters such as this plays a huge role, because it determines part of the personality of the character, right? Because you can't tell like much about this cat. You only have the eyes and the mouth, and also the positioning of the ears to relate to get an idea of what this cat is feeling. How is it like? What is it thinking, you know? So those are the most important elements in this case. And obviously the fur, which is like a completely different character, because it tells you like if it's a groomed cat, if it's a stray cat. Here we're going into defining a bit the face. Currently, as you see, the mouth looks completely disturbing, but don't worry, that won't be a problem. Part of my process, which I think for a lot of people is kind of weird, is that I don't finish something and then move on to the next thing. I don't know if you guys do that, but for me, it makes more sense to do it this way, because I don't know, it comes natural. Whereas if I start to create the shape of the base, right, the body, and then go to the nose, go to the mouth, then add the eyes, and then do the fur, and then add the materials, I don't actually enjoy that process. So you see, there's a lot of back and forth. Maybe it's also a thing for a beginner. You never know. But since I started with Blender, which was a hobby at first, and it happened like last year, and I spent like 3 months occasionally doing some random projects, and I gave up. I didn't have time for it. I was focusing on photography and other stuff. Then I started again like 1 month ago, like 2 months ago, something like that, to 1 month and a bit. And either way, I never enjoyed like the process of creating, leaving everything to be done, and then at the very end add the materials. I don't know, sue me, but I can't do that. So, I don't know if this is annoying for a tutorial, let me know and I'll try to work on it. But currently it's like the best way for me to work, and it gives me a lot of joy. So, and it also helps me to visualize better. I think that's another problem I have. So if I see everything gray as it is right now, I don't get an actual sense of the real thing. I don't know if that's weird. Maybe I have a problem. But anyway, so now we're making the eye, the first eye. We just need to focus on this one because we'll then just mirror it. So we just scale it down on the y-axis and we rotate it. So the cat is looking up, right? It has this dreamy look. So we are basically done. And now we have to see to focus on the hair. But let's not forget actually about the whiskers. The whiskers were the most annoying part, but we'll get to that in a second. So we start by adding the fur. The fur is quite a tricky process. For me, it's tricky because my computer faints when it sees that I'm going for the hair button. But anyway, so the thing with furry characters is that is this misconception that you add hair once, you groom it, and voila. Well, that's wrong. And I found out on, the hard way. But you need actually multiple layers. Just follow the settings I'm using, or you can just adjust according to how you want your cat to end up looking. I will just show you one layer of fur. And I personally ended up with 4 layers of fur, so I added the particle system like 3 more times. The thing is, you don't have to, you just respect the settings I used for the first one, and then the only thing you do for the other layers, I call them layers because of Photoshop, but for the other particle systems, you just need to play with the length. Right, so for example, this I use it as the base, but then in the front, between the eyes on the forehead, I use weight painting, I think it's called. And you just paint that and it automatically creates a group for you once you paint it. And then you add a new particle system and you go all the way down and you use that group. And I use that because of the shape of the forehead. No matter what I was doing, it was actually leaving it a bit bold. And I tried, puffing it, brushing it. Nothing seemed to work. So I just needed to add an extra particle system for the forehead. Then a very important thing is to add another particle system, but make it with a low number, so don't exceed the 1000 number. And for children, you go for interpolated, the same, but you see here for this one I used 20, and later on you should too put 20 in the render amount as well, because 100 is a lot, so you have 20 for display and 20 for render. But going back, you should add an extra particle system layer, right? And you should go for 1000 hairs in the number and only 1 for children. And the thing is, if you do that and you make the hairs a bit longer, you'll have this natural effect of the fur, because it's like fuzzy. So when you look at a cat, they always have thin shiny hairs, longer. We're a bit outside of the coat of the fur, so that makes it more realistic, and you should do that. But I think we'll talk a bit more about this later. It's kind of weird if you think of it, this cat, because it's like giving you owl vibes. Like I asked my boyfriend, like, do you like it? And he was like, what's that? Is it a cat? Is it an owl? Like in the beginning, like this. Oh, like this, it looks a bit creepy, but without the ears, or when I was making, no, I was sculpting the ears, and yeah, with the ears, it was looking like an owl. But it's kind of a hybrid if you think of it. But I'm very, very pleased with the result, and I'm super happy that I decided to record the process, which I would like to do more in the future, but as I mentioned, my computer is kind of like hating me right now. So I can't put a lot of pressure on it. So either way, for this, somehow it worked surprisingly. Um, but yeah, with the eyes, I did like a very cool thing um, in the shading mode, and I will be showing that too, because that's what it actually gives it this glassy effect. Like there were some toys back in the day, like can't remember something pets. I don't remember. There was like dogs and cats, and they had like this super tiny body, and the head was huge with huge, huge eyes, and then the nose was super tiny. Uh, I think in my mind, without knowing, I got inspiration from that. So yeah, you see here when I was doing the ears, he was like super convinced I was making an owl, but we're fixing that with by sculpting it. So we just mirror, so we don't have to work twice. And we start by dragging, like to get the base of the ear. We want them to be a bit pointy, but not necessarily pointy. It's very interesting how ears play such a big role when you create characters, especially on characters that are not like realistic, because obviously nobody, but there's no cat looking like this, you know, but the ears just, it's quite interesting. It's like if you should try it, and you'll see, like if you play with the pointiness, with the shape of the ears, you completely change the character. Quite interesting. So we need to give a bit of volume to the ears. We drag them like another thing I've learned, but not from a Blender tutorial. Actually, was from I think a Nomad Sculpt. If you know that app, it's an iPad app that allows you to sculpt in 3D. And I saw this girl on TikTok, and she was using basically the drag tool to do everything, literally. And she was even like pulling and dragging to create the nose, and all the techniques I knew to make noses were completely different. I started to integrate that technique to shape a nose and to shape like facial features. And there's a reason why I started to follow her. I was quite impressed with the result. And here too, like for example, usually people will go and draw sharp to create a hole, and then they start adding on the back of the ear. So which this is like a very complex process. But if you can just like drag it and then you just define it afterwards, you see that you're saving a lot of time, and sometimes the results are even better. So we have to, a thing that again I learned the hard way is that you have to go to object and apply all the transforms, and then go again to object and set the origin, because if not, if you don't do so, when you're trying to use the tools in sculpt mode, and you were trying to use the mirroring, so when you work on the X, for example, on the right, it applies to the left and so on, it's not working. So you need to do that process. I always do it because I never know when I'll need to get back and maybe adjust something or whatever. So basically, now we're starting the worst part of the video, and that is creating the whiskers, the eyebrows and the whiskers. Thanks God for the copy paste and, you know, the mirroring, because this was a pain in the ass, like no joke. You have to rotate. I started to fast forward a bit here because otherwise the video would be like, I don't know, 2 hours, 1 hour and a half. So you just increase the curve, and you start to you bevel it, right? And then you start to rotate, and you try to give it this like organic kind of look, not stiff. So I made, putting back the sketch on the screen, I made those eyebrows like a bit, I don't know why I feel the need to call them romantic, and they're so delicate, you see, elegant. So basically you want to do that and just rescale, but you have to keep in mind that you don't want to just duplicate one curve forever. You scale it down or scale it up, and then go a bit back in edit mode and you know, rotate it a bit, and also move it on the y-axis, basically front and back, up and down. Because if you look at a cat, I've seen a lot, so I'm going from one subject to another, but I've seen a lot of characters, or I don't know, pets made in 3D, cute cats, cute dogs, and they're adorable. Like, they're simply adorable when you see them from the front, but once you go on the side, they have everything aligned. So I haven't seen any cat with all the whiskers aligned, nor dog. I don't know what prototype that is, but I haven't seen that in reality. And obviously, it might look very, very good from the front, but it looks extremely unnatural from the sides, right? So it makes it unreal. So it actually drags the quality of your work. So you don't want to do that. So you just want to put in this tiny bit of extra effort to just position it. You add as many as you want, but don't exaggerate. I try to keep it kind of, you know, in between, like I don't know, a healthy amount of eyebrows. So you should just follow the same as I'm doing if you don't want to put too much effort into redesigning it. So you rotate on the Y, on the Z, on the X. You just want to get it as natural looking as possible. So here I'm going back and forth with the fur to see how they match, how the color actually matches the fur. Because everything, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to those eyebrows, was a pain in the ass, from the color to the shape. But anyway, now we just copy and paste them for the whiskers. So we position them around the nose, and we are trying to make them look a bit more different and imitates a bit like the shape of the whiskers of an actual cat. So not everything is imaginary in this project. So I think a healthy iteration here would be to just like have one, copy and paste it, and then rescale it, do a tiny bit of adjustment, and then copy and paste it again, and you know, you rescale, so you don't put like a lot of work into it, especially if it's not for a client. Obviously, if it's for a client, you put in the hours, the effort, but in this situation, especially because we'll have a very generous amount of fur covering the sides, you don't have to stress a lot, right? Here, I was losing my mind, for example, because everything was exactly as I didn't want it to look like, meaning aligned from the sides when you were looking. It was quite disturbing. So I'm trying, you see, to give it volume and to move them a bit. So the color for the whiskers was extremely annoying because in my sketch I went for white, but it was like pure white, blinding white, and that wasn't working for this like in 3D. So I was trying to aim for kind of then I thought, wait, then I thought, no, 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 I'll make them the same color. Obviously, that's the dumbest idea ever because they get lost between the fur. So then I went for this kind of bone white, that kind of like matches what I had in mind, matches the sketch, and it's still visually, pleasing. In the next video, I'll cover the fur. I will create the mug, the background, the lighting setup. I'll show that too. And also, I'll show you how exactly to make the eyes because I did this complex, not complex, but interesting node combination that gave me the glassy eyes. And I think the best future of this cat are the eyes actually. They're just adorable. So I found this combination to create this effect. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but keep an eye out for the next video. Here I was very grateful for the mirroring tool because I can just, boom, I join them, mirror, and voila, I don't have to do it again. So see you in the next part.